Nick Anisich. This is our February 16th info session, and the grant application period is currently open. There's 7 weeks until it's due on April 4th, 2024. So super excited the application period is open and grateful to have the time here all together. As you saw, as you were welcomed into the room, this info session is being recorded. It will also be posted as soon as that recording is processed, probably sometime early next week. So first and foremost, CDFA has a culture of support and collaboration. What that means is that we have guiding questions in our grant design and in our grant application period that asks, how can we simplify the process? How can we best support people? How can we help? How can we celebrate and validate? And also, as with any grant program or anything that you're trying to make significant changes, how can we create a lasting impact? So those are the things that guide our work, as well as how can we best offer support and technical assistance. We do that with office hours and peer-to-peer learning so that expertise can elevate in the room. It's not just us talking at you, which is a lot of how today will be, unfortunately. And then also we love to offer times for cross-pollinating across programs throughout the entire state. So that means that we have quarterly office hours or quarterly communities of practice calls that support our farm to school network, where all of these amazing folks that you saw introduce themselves in the chat are able to get to know each other and work through problems and dive deeper together. This is the purpose of the grant program. The California Department of Food and Agriculture 2023-24 California Farm to School Incubator Grant Program will award competitive grants to support projects that cultivate equity, nurture students, build climate resilience, and create scalable and sustainable change. Those are our big buckets of work. Within our grant program, we have specific funding priorities, and that's to engage students from underserved communities, to include small to mid-sized California food producers, to include veteran California food producers, socially disadvantaged California food producers, and limited resource farm households in California. We also prioritize projects that include California food producers that utilize climate smart ag practices, climate smart ag production systems like certified organic or transitioning to certified organic, or other regenerative strategies that increase resilience to climate change, improve the health of communities and soil, protect water and air quality, increase biodiversity, and help store carbon in the soil. So those are our main funding priorities. We also prioritize projects geographically across California to make sure that each region has the opportunity to implement farm to school. And this year, we're setting aside up to 10% of all available grant funding for awards for California Native American tribes, tribal-based nonprofits, and eligible tribal schools. So those are the big priorities. You get additional points throughout the application if you include those elements, or if you're part of that set aside, then you're in your own kind of lane. There's 4 funding tracks, and this is a whole systems approach to farm to school. So whether you're a farmer trying to do farm to school, a school or a childcare center, or a technical assistance partner, this whole system, you can get funding. So there's track 1 is farm to school TK through 12 procurement and education grant. Track 2 is the farm to school technical assistance grant. Track 3 is the farm to early care and education grant. And track 4 is the farm to school producer grant. You cannot apply to multiple tracks, but you can apply if you have an existing grant program. I'm sure we'll get more questions on that at the end. I'm happy to talk all that through. So here's what we're going to do in this session. We're going to start off with just a really quick overview of our grant webpage. There's so much information on that webpage, and because you're going to be filling out this application, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time on it. So we want to make sure everyone's comfortable navigating that space. After that, we'll dive back into the PowerPoint, do an overview for each funding track, talk about the eligibility requirement for each track, the details of each track, and then look at the application and scoring. So if you're like, I'm all in here for track 2, and I want to know, am I eligible? How long is the grant term? How will I be scored? What are the scoring categories? And is there an example of something? We'll have that for you. At the end, we'll close with an estimated program timeline, how to apply using the Amplifund grants portal, and additional resources. What I want, my 2 intentions today are to be slow and steady going through all of this information. So please know that this is going to be a lot of me talking and sharing information, but we want to get all of it out there to you. And the second thing is to really encourage everyone on the call who wants to apply to get into Amplify and start the application. Get moving forward on it. And then when you get stuck, reach out to our inbox. So I'm really encouraging action on this call. Okay. So here is the grant web page. I'm going to stop sharing this slide, and then I'll go to our grant web page for everybody to see. And like I said, the reason why I'm sharing the web page today is because there's so much great information on here for the grant, and this is your hub for accessing all of it. So we want to make sure everyone's clear. First, it just has an overview as part of the application and what's important here, summary of what's happened in the past and where we're at. There's a program timeline. That's this big gray box that says program timeline. So you can work through that. Here's the, as it starts to get more important, is the apply to the California Farm to School Incubator Grant Program. I call each of these accordion. When you click that accordion, it has the request for applications, which is all of the detailed information that we're going to share today. Then it has the links to the actual application portal for each track. So if you wanted to apply to track 1, it's right here on the website under apply to the grant program. Any of the tracks are all right there. We also wanted to highlight that there's this section, the application questions and review criteria. So if you're wondering, ooh, what are all the questions and how will they be scored? Oh, here it is right here. Perfect, right near the application link. So for someone who's either getting started on their application but wants all of it in one doc, you have it right there. Or maybe it's at the end and you finished your application, but before you submit it, you wanted to go through and try scoring your own app and see if it aligns with the review criteria. Then that information is right here on the webpage for you. So that's the first accordion. The second one just has the 4 tracks and their names so that you can, if it's hard to track 1, 2, 3, 4, it has everything here. There's also application resources. So if you're looking for the budget worksheet or the letter of intent for track 4 or a decision tree to see where you should apply or which track is right for you, that's there under resources. The last 2 things I'll show are questions and answers. When you email the California Farm to School at cdfa.ca.gov, when you email in your questions, all of these answers will be posted underneath the question and answer accordion. So we'll email it to you directly, but then we'll also put the information here in the question and answers tab. So that is updated weekly. So it's another resource for you in the application. And then last is the grant info sessions and weekly Q&As. There's so many opportunities. I know April 4th feels very, very close, and that there's President's Day and for many people spring break also in this window. So we wanted to make sure that there was ample opportunity to get your questions answered and ask a bunch of questions live. So we're doing one really big grant info session today. That's what you're on now. Thank you for joining us, all 80 people that are on live. And then we're going to have additional Q&A sessions. In those Q&A sessions, we're just going to welcome people in and take questions and do answers live. So you can talk to a real life person and not just an email address. There's also a few sessions here that are especially for California Native American tribes, tribal-based nonprofits, and tribal schools. They're open to the public, but we'll have additional resources there for our tribal partners. Also important to note, the time fluctuates. So there's a couple evening sessions. If you're a farmer and you would want to come in after, or if you're a school and you want to work with a farm and they can't join during the day, there's some 6 p.m.s on here for people to join. Okay, so that's an overview of the grant webpage. You know, there's so many great things. Amy, thank you for putting it in there, and welcome Scotty to the call. We're really excited to have all of this information on there for you. Okay, back to our slides here. Here's our slide deck. It's back up, it's back live. I'm going to dive now into each grant funding track and provide an overview and go through all of those details. So track 1 will fund individual public school districts, county offices of education, charter schools, and tribal schools in California that are school food authorities to establish new or expand existing farm-to-school programs that do 2 things: that procure California grown or produced whole or minimally processed foods for incorporation into school meals, especially from food producers that utilize climate-smart ag practices or production systems like certified organic or transitioning to certified organic, small to mid-sized food producers, veteran food producers, socially disadvantaged food producers, and or limited resource farm households in California. So there has to be a procurement element to the project, and there has to be an education element where you're engaging students in hands-on food education opportunities, especially standards-aligned and culturally relevant opportunities led by credentialed public school educators. These educational opportunities should complement the school meal program's food procurement efforts. So it has to have a procurement element and an education element. It's optional, but recommended that if you want to, you can employ a farm to school staff member or a farm to school or offer professional development for staff. So that's the overview of track 1. To be eligible, you have to be a public school district or a county office of ed or a charter school or a tribal school, and you have to be a school food authority currently operating the National School Lunch Program. And of course, the California Farm to School Grant Program, you have to be in California. Now here's the details. And again, this is as much as we could fit on a slide and not like absolutely lose our minds. The RFA has all of these specific details, and the application has all of the specific questions that you have to answer to apply. So you can find more information there. Oops, sorry, let me go back. So the grant term is up to 2 years. We're estimating right now that it will be November 24 through October 26. The funding formula for track 1 is if you're an eligible entity, you take every student that's enrolled and multiply by $15 per student. Minimum award is $200,000 and the maximum award is $1 million. Allowable costs include anything that you would need to buy more whole or minimally processed California grown foods and to educate students about them. So it's a pretty flexible program here. So if you need to use funds for California grown food for your school meals, or you want to use it for hands-on food education, if you need infrastructure, equipment, and supplies for hands-on food education and school kitchens, you could do that. You want to hire a farm to school coordinator. There are some farm to school coordinators on the call today that are funded by the grant. Welcome, all of you. You need labor for procuring or processing foods. You can bill that to travel, contractors. You want to do that, mini grants or indirect costs, all available and allowable. The reporting process for this grant, it's not as bad as a USDA grant, but there's definitely reporting that you should map out. And there's a beginning interview, a pre-survey, and a final interview. Then there's regular financial reporting where you're tracking your California grown purchases and other spending. And then there's quarterly check-in surveys where you share what's happening, what's going well, how can we best support you, and what early impact metrics are you gathering. So there's this reporting element and the allowables on this slide. Okay. Next is the grant application and scoring guide here. So again, the full information on each of these scoring total point categories here on how you can get to 15 or how you get to 35, that's on the webpage in the application questions and scoring criteria section. So you can find it there under apply to the farm to school grant. This is just an overview. So a number of these categories are unscored because everybody's just got to submit it. Your foundational information, like the name of your district and your address and all of that, your funding formula and your project team, everybody's just got to include that. So you don't get extra points or no points for that. Then the project team and organizational commitment is worth 15 points. So that asks, why does farm to school matter? And how is farm to school built into your organization? Community need, which includes points for engaging students from underserved communities, that's worth 35 points. Project title and summary is unscored. Your procurement work plan and budget is 20 points. And you can see highlighted here on the right-hand side, that includes how will your project include small to mid-sized food producers? How will your project include veteran producers and these other prioritized producer groups? And how will it include producers that utilize climate smart ag practices and production systems? So in that procurement work plan and budget, you'll explain how you're going to do those things. How will you incorporate those parts? Education work plan and budget is also up to 20 points. And that is on the right side, how will the education side of your project include standards aligned hands-on food education? How will it include hands-on food education that's led by credentialed public school educators? And how will you include food education that is culturally relevant? Again, it's up to the 20-point total. So that just means that, let me move my face off of my notes. It just means that it's up to 20 points. It's not mandated that you hit each of these things, but that's how you'll max out that scoring category. Is that right, Amy? Anything else to add there? Good. Okay, now I can move my face. I figured it out. All right. So and then the last 10-point category here is project viability. That's how will the project be sustained beyond the duration of the grant, which elements of the project, and then also, like, is your budget lined up with the things that you want to accomplish? Okay, checking the chat here. It's just Amy putting things in the chat. Okay, no questions yet. Here's an example of a past Track 1 project. The grantees, the Yucaipa Cali Mesa Joint Unified School District, they support 13 schools. Last year, they were awarded $150K. This year, they would be eligible for $200,000. But the project activities, you can see that there is an education element and a procurement element together. So they were providing hands-on local farm field trips that incorporate next generation science standards. And then they were increasing procurement of seasonal fruits and vegetables from the local farms that were providing the field trips, and they were incorporating it in the school meals. So you can see the kids go and see it on the farm, and it's connected to science standards, and then they see it in the cafeteria, and it's connected to their forks. So really awesome project. So that's everything for Track 1 that we're going to cover today. If you have questions, you can stay on till the end. We'll have more info there. And then we're going to move into Track 2. Thank you. And then Amy, can you flag these questions for the end when we go back? That'd be great. Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience. Like I said, this is the marathon day with all of the info. So excuse me. So Track 2 is the Farm to School Technical Assistance Grant. And Track 2 has evolved over past years, but this has all the up-to-date information about this year's funding. So Track 2 will fund farm to school technical assistance organizations, excuse me, to help California school food authorities and California food producers implement resilient and sustainable farm to school programming. TA projects must focus technical assistance in one of the following categories. So you choose your bucket here. You can choose the school food category. If you choose that one, you'll have to build capacity of California school food authorities to implement farm to school procurement programs. Or you could choose the education category, in which case you'll build capacity for educators employed in California public school districts, county offices of ed, charter schools, or tribal schools that are school food authorities to implement hands-on food education programs in TK-12 settings, especially programs that are standards aligned, culturally relevant, incorporate credentialed public school educators, and implement and complement the school meal program. Or you can apply in the third category, which is about producer training, where you'll build capacity of California food producers to sell products to California school food authorities. So just like the whole grant has a systems approach, this technical assistance grant is kind of a mini version of that, where we have people focused on school food education and producer training. This is a really important note about Track 2. Providing technical assistance and building capacity refers to activities like coaching, training, and supporting California school food authorities, educators, or food producers to implement farm to school activities themselves. So Track 2 does not intend to fund organizations to directly implement procurement, education, or food sales projects for the partners. So this is important. Of course, there's going to be working side by side and complementing each other. But the goal of this is not that the school district or the farm or whoever is just handing off the task to you and then you're going to do it for them for free. The goal here is that you are partners in implementing this, and that there's coaching, training, and supporting and empowering partners in the field. Here's eligibility for the technical assistance grants. You have to be a technical assistance organization. And this definition, it tried to cast a very wide net so that any type of entity could apply as long as they follow these things. So any of the following orgs that A, have an established history supporting California school food authorities with implementing farm-to-school procurement programs. B, have an established history supporting California educators with implementing hands-on food education programs in TK through 12 settings. Or C, have an established history supporting California food producers and institutional food procurement can apply. That could include nonprofit orgs, including ag industry partners or nonprofit partners, tribal-based nonprofits, RCDs, UCANR, public universities in California, Native American tribes, county agencies and local governments in California, ag marketing programs, projects with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. Any of these types of orgs, as long as you have that established history, you can apply. And then there's also like, just reach out to us if you're like, I have a history, I know what I'm doing. Can I apply? Just ask us. And then we're happy to get into your specific case. The only important thing to note here is that each of these has to have a school food, they have to have a partner. So if you're a school food and education project, you must partner with at least one California school food authority. If you're going to apply in the producer training project bucket, then you have to have at least one California school food authority and at least one California food producer signed on to your project to be a partner. The reason for this is just verification that you're going to be able to implement the project. So that's all that's there. There is a note here that food hubs are not eligible. Food hubs this year will be applying in track 4. So we'll get to that later. Okay, track 2, farm to school grant details. The grant term is up to 2 years with an estimated date of November 24 to October 26. The estimated award amounts are $50K to $350K. So you just say how much you want in that bucket and then build your project around that. The allowable costs are anything you need to build school nutrition educator or producer capacity to implement farm to school programs. That would include California grown food for hands-on food education, infrastructure, equipment and supplies, staff, travel, contractors. Also important to note here in track 2 that mini grants are allowable. So if you think the best way to help producers or schools or whatever is to give mini grants, then that is an allowable cost in track 2. Indirect costs are also allowable. The only thing that's not allowed is food procurement for the schools. That's what track 1 is for. So if you want to do food procurement for school meal programs, that's track 1. For reporting, just like all the others, there's a beginning interview, a pre-survey, and a final interview. There's regular financial reporting where you're tracking all your spending. And then there's a quarterly check-in survey where you're asking what's happening, what's going well, what's not going well, how can we help you? We want to be on the same team. The technical assistance grant scoring, you can see that there's a number of unscored categories, just like previous tracks, but the scoring categories include your project team and organizational commitment, which is up to 15 points, community need, which includes points for engaging students from underserved communities, if you're in the school food and education project category, or including the producers in the priority producer groups that we've outlined throughout the grant. Those would get you up to 25 points for the community needs action. Farm to school experience is 15 points to showcase your history and experience implementing farm to school and coaching and working alongside districts and producers to implement farm to school projects. And then your technical assistance work plan is worth up to 35 points. So that includes points for how you will include small to mid-sized food producers, including veteran food producers and all the priority food producer groups, as well as producers that utilize climate smart ag practices. That's for the producer training section and school food section. You'll also get points if you're, you can see at the bottom here, it's 35 points if you're in the school food and education project categories for engaging and working with credentialed public school educators. And then finally, project viability is up to 10 points. Again, we're just cross-checking your budget and your work plan, and then looking at how you will plan to sustain the project in the long term. Okay, and then I see some more questions coming in the chat, so I'm going to pause for a second. Can we get a link to the presentation is a very common one, and yes, of course. Another common question that we expect to see is, what if our program aims to do all of the above in the technical assistance category? Would we get penalized if we choose one, but we have parts of the other two aspects? I want to highlight those that question here with everyone, and then I'll come back to the other questions at the end. If you are a technical assistance org and your work crosses so many different boundaries, it's up to you to just choose the best one. And then there's questions within each of those categories that relate to the other ones. So basically, you'll have the opportunity to explain how it connects to education and explain how it connects to producer training if you're in the school food category, for an example. So there's those opportunities within the application to really make those connections. And what I would really encourage you to do is go into the app and find those questions and see if that will help you tell the story of your project. And if it doesn't, then reach out and see if there's a better fit that you want to investigate together. Yeah. Okay, and for all the other questions, please keep putting them in there. We'll come back to them as we get to the end here. For track 2, there's not really a project example available right now because track 2 was so different in the past. So we hope to have more examples as we go. Okay, pausing here, we're going to go to the track 3, the Farm to ECE grant. This is the overview section. So track 3 will fund childcare centers in California and Farm to ECE technical assistance orgs to establish new or expand existing Farm to ECE programs that procure California grown or produced whole or minimally processed foods for incorporation into meals, snacks, and or food boxes for young children, especially foods from food producers that utilize climate smart ag practices or production systems like certified organic or transitioning to certified organic, small to mid-sized food producers, veteran food producers, socially disadvantaged food producers, and or limited resource farm households. And the project will have to engage young children in hands-on food education opportunities, especially standards aligned and culturally relevant opportunities led by educators with a child development teacher permit that complement the meal programs and or the food boxes California food procurement efforts. So again, procurement and education together. It's also optional if desired to employ Farm to ECE staff or to provide professional development related to farm to school for staff. Here's who's eligible. It's Farm to ECE technical assistance orgs or childcare centers. Childcare center definition is easy. That's the one I'll start with. You have to be located in California, provide care all or part of the day. You could be single site or a multi-site childcare center. And you have to primarily serve young children birth through age 5. You also have to be licensed by CDSS Community Care Licensing Division or meet the appropriate criteria for an exemption. For technical assistance organizations, again, it's hard to define this because it's kind of a broad thing. So we put any of the following orgs that provide support to ECE providers in California. The CACFP sponsors, Child Care and Development Fund tribal lead agencies in California, Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies in California, First 5 county commissions in California, Head Start grantees in California, nonprofit orgs, tribal-based nonprofit orgs, RCDs in California, UCANR and UCCE county offices, public universities in California, California Native American tribes, county agencies in California, local governments in California, California ag marketing programs, or projects with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. If you're a technical assistance org, you are required to have partnership with at least 2 ECE sites in the state. And again, these requirements are to show that, is to verify that people want to be working with you. They can't just name drop a site and then not have the site sign on. So there's got to be some trust, and that's what that partnership is all about. Here's the grant details. The grant is up to 2 years, again, same as all the others, November 24 to October 26. The award amounts $50K to $200K. And the ECE center or applicant will just say what the award should be. There's no formula there. And then they can back their application. Allowable costs are anything you need to establish or expand farm to ECE programs. So again, lots of flexibility. California grown food for meals, snacks, food boxes, and hands-on food education, all good. Infrastructure, equipment, or supplies, fantastic. Staff, love it, would love to fund staff. Labor, definitely on board. Travel, contractors, if they want to do a mini grant, I saw a question, what's a mini grant? It would be where a grantee did sub-awards out, smaller awards to their community or to their smaller sites, they could do that. And then and indirect costs are all allowed. Reporting is the same as all the other tracks, a beginning survey or a beginning interview, a pre-survey, and a final interview, regular financial reporting, and then tracking purchases and other spending. Quarterly check-ins will also be part of this, where you're meeting with the team, sharing what's working, how can we help, what are the procurement practices that you're working on, what are your impacts, all of that sort of thing. Okay, and then here's the scorecard for track 3. Somehow I'm getting more energized, sharing more detailed information. I hope all of you are hanging on. It's been 37 minutes, so thank you. Track 3, this is the scoring in track 3. Again, a number of unscored categories that just everybody has to fill out and complete. 15 points for your project team and organizational commitment. Up to 35 points for community need, which includes engaging children from underserved communities. Up to 20 points for your procurement work plan and how that will incorporate all these different prioritized producer groups you can see in the right-hand column. And then also up to 20 points for how your project will incorporate these prioritized education activities, which is standards aligned, led by educators with child development, teacher permit, and culturally relevant. Again, these are not requirements. This is how you would get the maximum point total. So the more of these that you can stack up, that will give you a competitive advantage, but it's not a requirement. So when you're looking at that scorecard, you can determine, is this 2 points worth it for me to change my whole project around to fit this? Or is this 5 points worth it? Or is this 10 points worth it? You'll be able to look at the application scoring criteria from our webpage and make that determination for yourself. And then last 10 points for project viability. So that's, is your budget all aligned? Does your work plan and everything sync up? And then how or which elements of this project will be sustained afterwards. Okay, and then here's an example, is the McCarthy Family Child Development and Training Center. They were awarded $200,000, and their project activities, you can find the connection between procurement and education. So they procured locally grown produce for children's meals. They provided food boxes with locally grown foods to families. They implemented seasonal food taste tests for children, and they collaborated with a composting org to plan and implement a composting system for their child care center that included education for staff, children, and families. They also implemented a food-based curriculum for children, including planting, growing, and harvesting. So you can see there's so much connectivity there between procurement and education at the center. Really excited to fund that project last year. Okay, going into the chat to see if there's anything. Amy, thank you so much for putting the link to the application there. Jazz has a question similar to Alma. How will funding dollars be prioritized for track 3? Will ECE facilities be competitive in the process? Great questions. And we'll circle back to that process and how the dollars will be prioritized at the end here. Okay. Track 4, our last track before, and then we have the overview section at the end. So we're nearly there. Thank you all for sticking with us. Again, this is going to be recorded and posted online. So if you're just joining us at the bookmarked YouTube video, welcome. Hello, good to see you. So track 4 will fund California food producers and public serving food aggregation and distribution enterprises to increase production, processing, and or distribution capacity to sell California grown or produced full or minimally processed foods to the school food market. Funding will prioritize small to mid-sized food producers, veteran, socially disadvantaged and or limited resource food producers, and food producers utilizing climate smart ag practices, climate smart ag production systems like certified organic or transitioning to certified organic or other regenerative strategies. The eligibility for track 4, there's two different options. Again, I'll start with the simpler one first. A California food producer. That's a person, group of individuals, nonprofit org, or Native American tribe that leases, rents, or owns land in California and cultivates crops, raises livestock, and or uses indigenous food production practices on their land, and or a California seafood harvester. All eligible. There's also eligibility this year in track 4 for public serving food aggregation and distribution enterprises. This is a new type of organization that we're including in track 4 this year. It's often called a food hub. This entity serves as a supply chain intermediary for local or regional farms or ranches, particularly those optimizing climate smart ag production practices or production systems, like certified organic or transitioning to certified organic, and following state labor practices. An eligible enterprise must prioritize to the greatest extent possible, but is not limited to serving California farms or ranches that are 500 acres or less, cooperatively owned, or owned by farmers who are socially disadvantaged, beginning, limited resource, veterans, or disabled. Additionally, an eligible enterprise must be able to farm identify sourcing for 100% of products it sells to ensure that state dollars support California farms and ranches. Here's the clarification on eligibility. In this grant program, the term food producer does not include school-operated gardens and school-operated farms. What this means is that a school-operated garden or a school-operated farm is not eligible to apply to track 4. School-operated gardens and school-operated farms can be included in track 1 projects. However, they would not qualify as a food producer partner in tracks 1, 2, or 3. Basically, we tried to delineate if the school is running this, then the school should just apply and include it in their project in track 1. Third parties, such as individual contractors or nonprofit orgs that operate a farm on school property rather than the school operating it themselves, those types of entities are eligible to apply to track 4 as a California food producer. They're also eligible food producer partners in tracks 1, 2, and 3. So again, we're expecting some questions on this. We know it's weird. So please just reach out to us if you're feeling confused at all about where you would fit in. Basically, we're trying to identify the difference between something that is a school-run operation compared to something where like the school might just own the land, but they're leasing it out and really don't have a ton of connection to it. So that's what we're trying to clarify here. Again, please reach out with questions if you're wondering where you fit into this process. Here's the continued eligibility process. Applicants must be able to identify the schools that they plan to work with, which means at least one California Public School District County Office of Ed, charter school or tribal school that's a school food authority currently operating the National School Lunch Program, and or at least one California Child Care Center currently operating the CACFP program. So if you're a farm and if you're applying in track 4, you have to have at least somebody signing on who's running a federal meal program. You also have to provide evidence of collaboration. So we have a template online that's on our webpage under the resources section. Amy, is that also hyperlinked in the application itself? Or is it from the webpage that they have to pull it?
Yeah, there's a link in the track for application to the website. And then once you're on the website, you can access the letter of intent template. And then I also put the link in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So it's posted on our webpage. If you're wondering where it is, you can also email us and we'll send it to you directly. So you have to identify the partner that you have, and then you have to get them to sign the letter that we have a template for. So it should be easy enough for you to just say, yeah, I know them, I work with them. Can they fill out this letter? You make it part of the app. Here's the details of the track. The grant term up to 2 years. Again, estimated it'll be November 24 through October 26. The award amounts are $15,000 to $350,000. So we did hear everyone in the public comment phase, and we're really grateful for everyone's comments on increasing this award amount for track 4. So it's been increased to $350K. The allowable costs are anything you need to increase capacity to sell California grown whole or minimally processed foods to schools, and if desired to provide hands-on food education to schools. So that's equipment, infrastructure, and supplies to increase production, processing, and distribution capacity to sell food to schools, or equipment, infrastructure, supplies that you want to use to establish or enhance your use of climate smart ag for the school food that you're growing, or to establish or expand hands-on food education opportunities for students or school staff that complement the food sales. Staffing costs dedicated to farm to school activities are allowed. Certifications, licenses, or insurance needed to sell food to schools, including food safety plans. Those are allowable costs. And as you get through the application, you'll note that you'll have to have a food safety plan incorporated in your project if you don't already have it. You'll have to build that in to use time during the grant to go through a food safety training. Travel, contractors, and indirect, that's all allowed. Uh-oh, I clicked a button. Okay, I think we're okay. You still seeing the right screen, Amy? All right, yay. And then reporting is the same as everywhere else. Beginning interview, pre-survey, final interview, regular financial reporting where you're tracking your spending, quarterly check-in surveys, what's working, how can we help, what sales are you making, are you using climate smart ag practices, what other resources could you need to improve your project, that sort of thing. Here's the scorecard for track 4. Foundational information is who are you and what types of projects or what types of climate smart ag practices are you using. So foundational info, apps from small to mid-sized food producers or small to mid-sized public serving food aggregation and distribution enterprises is in that foundational info section, as well as you'll flag if you are a veteran food producer, socially disadvantaged food producer, and or limited resource farm household in California. Project team and organizational commitment, 15 points, just like the other tracks. Business history and farm to school history, 15 points. Farm to school work plan is 24 points. And then your production practices and or aggregation and distribution practices is 21 points. So that's where you'll outline your climate smart ag practices or ag production systems in that section. And really just, you can describe how you operate your farm. Are you certified or not? Can you verify or not? Or are you committed to these practices culturally? What's that like for you? That's up to 21. And then project viability. Again, how will this be sustained long-term? As well as, does the budget line up with the work plan and all of that sort of thing? 10 points. It totals 100 total. Here's an example from 2022 is McGrath Family Farmers, Inc. Last year, they applied for 150K. This year, it would have been eligible for up to 350. The project activities included purchasing infrastructure and equipment to scale up farm to school production, growing crops for schools while conserving water, composting and planting hedgerows, and partnering with local school districts, of course, for sales. So really exciting that they had so many opportunities to scale their business and invest in infrastructure and equipment. Really, really fantastic. Okay, so now we're into the home stretch here, our estimated program timeline. The application period is open now. As you can find on our webpage, Q&A Zoom sessions are weekly throughout the application period. Applications are due April 4th by 5 p.m. Again, I know that feels really close. It's 7 weeks away. April through May is the review process. May or June is when we're going to give that award notification and announcement. So we hope it could be by the end of May, but we'll see how many apps we get and then how long it will take. And then finally, the grant term that we're expecting is November 24th through October 26th. So in your application, as you are putting together your timelines, keep these 2 dates in mind. They are estimates, so we might ask for some flexibility later, but we think that's doable. Okay, now we have how to apply to the online application portal. These are live links here to each of the application tracks, just like on our webpage where you click that accordion that says apply to the grant program. This will take you directly to the Amplifund link, to the Amplifund system. If you click on the track 1 link, it'll send you to this page. You click apply, and then it'll ask you to either log in or create an account in the system, just like any other thing that makes you create a profile. You'll create a profile, it'll have your contact info and all of that. You'll hit register, And then once you're into the Amplifund system, you'll find the application. You could click it open. One important thing to note in Amplifund, it doesn't auto-save. So please click save every 5 minutes, to make sure that every answer that you put in there is saving. Okay, the additional resources, again, this is on the web page also, but the request for applications that has all of the detailed information for each track. That's linked here as well as on our web page. The eligibility decision tree, previous grant recipients decision tree, track 4 letter of intent template is here, and then the budget worksheet is here also. So you'll upload that budget worksheet into, but you don't upload it, it's built into the application, correct? Amy's going to correct me.
Sorry, that was confusing. My bad. So this budget worksheet it's an optional resource if you'd like to use it as you're preparing your grant application to visualize your budget. But like Nick said, the budget questions are built into the application form when you're filling out your online application. So you won't be uploading the budget worksheet into your application.
So it's more of a planning tool so that you can see your budget kind of all in one, correct?
Right. It's like a planning optional, budget worksheet tool.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's great. So you have another thing there that you can use with your team in your planning. Couple last things here before we go into the chat and start working through the questions is CDFA assistance during the application period. So how can we help, whether it's our regional staff or our statewide staff, how can we help? We can answer informational questions about the grant via email and on our weekly Zoom sessions, which are fantastic. We can help introduce you to producers and school support orgs. So let's say you're a farmer and you want to apply, but you don't have a connection to a school yet. We can help try to make that happen for you during this time period. We know it's tight, but we can turn that around. Or if you're a school and you need help connecting to climate smart farms in your area so that you can include them in your application, or small farms or whatever, we can help you with that, our regional teams. And then also we can provide technical support for the online application portal in Amplifund. So if you're having any Amplifund issues, email us. Here's what we can't do, even though we would love to. We can't give specific feedback on grant ideas. So if you're like, hey, I could do this, this, or this, what do you think will get the grant? Like, look at the scorecard, right? Look at the scorecard and see what aligns best. We also can't assist with the writing of your application. So we can't write it for you. We can't review it before you submit it. We would love to do that sort of thing, but it would just create a competitive advantage for people that know us better. And then also there'd be so many asks of us, we wouldn't be able to get through all of them before the deadline. So that's how we can help and where, unfortunately, we're not able to help. Okay, so now we're going to go into questions. So I'm going to stop the screen share and we're going to go into that. But please remember, all the information is on the grant webpage. You can send in written questions to cafarmtoschool@fa.ca.gov. That's the best place to send your questions so that we can provide clear guidance and answers to you. And then last, please keep this April 4th by 5 p.m. timeline on your radar as you're going. Super excited for all of this and very grateful for everyone for sticking around. It's 11:54, so this whole session has been recorded, and the Q&A will also be posted as part of this recording. So if you have to hop off at noon, know that the recording will be posted and you can go back in and watch it or rewatch it or whatever you want to do. You can also go into the webpage and submit your questions that way. Okay, let's see if there's anything else to cover. That's it. So I'm going to stop the share. Thank you all so much for being on this whole time. I was shocked to stop sharing and see so many faces. I can't lie to you. So, okay, how do we want to do this? Amy or Rachel, have you flagged which ones came in first, or I can just scroll up in the Q&A? What do you think will be best?
I have all the questions in a document if you want me to read them off, or if you want to.
Yeah, can you read them off? That would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one is from Michelle. So we're a very small charter school. Does the size of beneficiary pool impact scoring?
Hi, Amy, does it?
Hi. Hi, Michelle. That's a great question. So if this is for track 1, then the number of students does not impact scoring. It does impact the amount of funding that you can request for the grant award dollar amount requested. So, oh, great. Okay, for track one, thanks for clarifying. So there's a funding formula toward the beginning of the track one application, and that is based on the number of students enrolled at the school sites that your project will be serving. And if you're like a very small school district and the result of that funding formula is less than $200,000, then you can apply for the minimum of $200,000. So I hope that helps. Let us know if you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, it can't be under 200. In the past, we used to let people do less than the minimum, but it's a lot of work. Yeah. Okay. Tori, I see your hand. We're going to go through the ones in the chat, and then we'll get to the hands next.
Tamara asked, would those field trips need to be led by credentialed teachers?
In track one. So no, it's not a requirement that credentialed teachers do anything in your project. It's optional to include them, and how they're included. I think it's worth, is it a 3 points, Amy?
It's up to 5 points in track one if a project, oh gosh, I forget the exact words, but if the project is going to increase hands-on education, hands-on food education opportunities that are led by credentialed public school educators, then the scoring is up to 5 points. But an applicant could also opt not to include that in their project, and not go for those 5 points.
Yeah, so like a farmer could totally lead, a farmer is going to lead a field trip for the most part, and they don't have a teaching credential. But if a public school teacher is maybe reviewing those materials or helping that farmer make sure that what they're covering is in alignment with the standards that they're covering in the classroom, then you would just explain that in that section of the application that says the credentialed teachers will be involved by doing X, Y, and Z. And that's great. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Rachel.
Next one, Moises asked, we're working on our grant and we are working on trying to include community schools in our district to be our education focus. Would the administrative member be able to be the director of community schools?
So that's part of the project team question. And so the project team question at the beginning, it's really up to you to decide who's the proper person as part of your project who would fit that. So if the director of community schools can handle what's described in that part of the application, then yeah, definitely you can incorporate them. If they are the person cross-cutting all these different departments, then that would be a perfect role. Yeah.
Okay, and then this one was touched on, but I just wanted to make sure if there's any other questions. Claudia asked for the track 2 eligibility. What if our program aims to do all of the above? Would we get penalized if we choose one? Just seeing if there's any other.
No penalty. I would just say choose the one that you feel like is most directly aligned, and then there's cross-cutting things from there. So you'll be able to explain how you can connect to education and how you can connect to the food producers. I feel like, well, that's where I'll stop. I don't want to get too much. I don't want to lead people down a path. Choose what you think is the best, is the closest, what you think you're going to do the most of, and then there will be those opportunities to explain. Yeah. Thank you.
Alma asked, is there a bigger amount of money set aside for track 3 this year? Last year, only 6 projects were awarded, and I believe none of them were preschools. Do we have a chance?
It's a great question. It's so hard with a competitive grant program to know. What we are very excited about is last year we only had 25 million. And this year the number is, I can't remember if it's 58.2 or 52.8.
52.8.
52.8. So we have almost twice as much money. So we want to increase the amounts available in each track. It of course depends on the applicant pool. Everyone definitely has a chance. And what we recommend is you're going to apply, ask for the help as soon as you get stuck, and then make sure that you're looking at the scorecard as you go and making sure you're aligning with each of those categories. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to add for track 3 this year in the RFA on page 19 for track 3 eligibility, we said, note about award distribution, the CDFA will aim to award a proportional number of childcare centers and Farm to ECE technical assistance organizations based on the number of applications from each eligibility type. So just wanted to highlight that too, if you're a child care center out there and you're interested in applying.
Okay. Elias asked, for organizations that typically serve in a value chain coordination role, for example, facilitating market relationships between producer and procurement buyer, connecting dots within the value chain, what would make the most sense if we can't engage in procurement directly?
So, I mean, if you're a technical assistance provider, then track 2 would be the track for you. And if you're working with school districts, and then how about this? It depends on how you approach the problem. If you approach it of working with the schools first and then finding producer partners for them, then to me, that would be a school food bucket application because you're supporting a school food initiative. If you approach it from the producer side first, and you work with producers first and foremost, and then you try to find procurement partners for them, then that would be a producer training element of the project. The challenge there is that we don't want you to just do it for them. And then they go, hey, thanks so much. And then when the grant's over, they haven't learned anything and aren't going to keep doing it. So that's the challenge with track 2. The other option in that case is to be a contractor on a grant for someone. So if you have a school that you work with and they want to keep using your services, then they could apply in track 1 to have you on as a contractor to do work for them. That would be okay. So you could be written into their project. Or if there's a producer that you represent in the marketplace, then they could write you into a track 4 app as a contractor. So different options there depending on how you approach the problem and how you partner with your partners. There you go. Okay.
Perfect.
I would say this is like the radio DJ. Next caller.
Next one, we touched on this a little bit, but to see if there's anything else to add, Cindy had asked, can CDFA help define mini grant requirements?
Oh yeah, so mini grant requirements is a more detailed question, and Amy, I'll hand that to you for the details. But just in theory, a mini grant would be that I'm Nick, I'm getting a grant from CDFA, and then I'm going to distribute it. I'm going to post some sort of grant process where I'm going to give it out to farmers that I work with, for example. That would be mini grants. Amy, what would be the process for distributing mini grants?
Yeah, great question, Cindy. So if you're interested in proposing mini grants in your project budget in the application, it kind of can fit into one of 2 of the budget categories. So one place would be there's an other cost category. So mini grants might fit in there for some applicants. And then we also recognize that mini grants might fit under contractual costs depending on an organization's own internal procedures of how they manage those types of funds. But the thing I wanted to note just in terms of the process is that grant recipients distributing funds via mini grants must ensure that the mini grant recipients are also following the same allowable and unallowable costs of the program that the grant recipient is following, and that the mini grant recipient is documenting how they're spending the funds. So those would be kind of 2 things to keep in mind on the mini grant side of things.
Marie asked, do we need to provide letters of commitments or support from any partners for track 1?
For track 1, it's just whoever you name. Is that right, Amy? If you're naming someone that they're going to be part of it, you should get a letter from them.
Yeah, this is a great question about track 1. So track 1 does not require letters of support this year. It does require in the project team section of the application that you name your project team members. And as part of it, that you include 2 sentences for each team member, one that says what their role in the project is, and one that clearly describes why they think the project is important. So in that way, we're trying to encourage that discussion among project team members before submitting the application, but we are not requiring this year in track 1 that applicants provide letters of support from the team members.
What about, Amy, if they name a farm, for example, in their procurement plan? If they're like, we're going to buy from Full Belly Farm, do they have to have a letter from Full Belly?
Not in track 1.
There you go. So that's important to note. I thought that if you were name dropping someone, you would have to. So I would definitely tell those people and coordinate with them, and they can provide a letter of support as an upload, but it's not a required element. Yeah. Good question.
Vanessa asked, can we get more info for reporting on track 1?
Hi, Vanessa. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of it in the RFA. So we can send that section. But if you download the RFA and just Control F reporting, then it will have all of it. And Amy, do you already know what pages? Are you doing it now?
Yeah, it's on page 36. I'll put a link in the chat if you want to explore it.
Yeah. So page 36 of the RFA will have all of that information on what that looks like and what that process is like. We also have our regional staff that helps with reporting. I mean, we can't collect the data for you, but if you're falling behind or whatever, they'll set up a call and work with you to help get you up to speed and get all the questions answered and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
Danny asked, is grant management an allowable cost, or would that fall under indirect costs?
Amy, does grant management fall under admin of just like general grant costs, or is it an indirect cost?
Oops, sorry. I was putting something in the chat.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, yeah, you got it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, Danny. So, yeah, indirect costs, I'm going to put the definition of them in the chat.
I have a question. Does this grant cover anything?
Oh, did I miss something? I'm sorry.
No, keep going, Amy. Keep asking your question. I think Bruce had a question, but we are going in order. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put the definition of indirect cost in the chat. This is from the CDFA Grant Administration Regulations. And in this grant program, indirect costs can be up to 30% of direct costs when you're building your proposed project budget. And the definition of indirect costs is costs incurred for common or joint objectives that cannot be identified specifically with a particular project, program, or organizational activity. Typical indirect costs include, but are not limited to, administrative or clerical staff costs, rent, utilities, and internet service, cellular and landline telephone service, general office supplies, and insurance. So that's the definition of indirect costs if you're proposing funds in that section. There is also a separate, in each of the 4 funding tracks, there's a separate budget category for farm to school staff costs. And that can be where you propose, staff members who are going to be directly working on the grant project. So I think you'll kind of reflect on what the purpose of the cost is for, and try to see if it best fits under farm to school staff costs as a direct cost that's directly working on the project, or an indirect cost that fits into this definition. And if that doesn't answer your question, because I'm still trying to understand indirect costs too, please follow up with us via email, and we can make sure to fully answer your question if you have follow-ups.
What a detailed answer. So many options. Thank you, Amy, for sharing it. Pamela put in the chat your grant encyclopedia. It's definitely true. The grant gets more and more detailed every year, but it's because everybody asks so many great questions, and then it leads us down these detailed paths. So, okay, next one, Rachel.
Okay, Michelle asked, for track 1, if programming through a school district serves district early childhood sites, pre-K, and district special education young adults as part of your programming, can we include those students in our enrollment numbers to figure out our funding allocation, or do we have to only include TK through 12 students?
Hi, this is such a great question because there's so many variations on how you could count it. So we're going to go back and see what we're able to track on the technical side, and then we'll respond to this one over email and put it in the Q&A responses for everyone. Because we got to see what's technically able for us to count and track and verify. Yeah.
Jazz asked, my question is similar to Alma's earlier. How will the funding dollars be prioritized for track 3? Will ECE facilities be competitive in the process?
Yes, Amy, I thought we blocked out how much we thought would be available in each track, did we? We had it roughed out somewhere. We'll share that in an FAQ of what we expect to award across each track. And it really does depend on how much money totally is requested. So we have to give at least 50% of the awards into track one due to the legislature. So, and the requirement to prioritize track one, sorry. We have to go to track one with at least 50% of the money in order to work with to flag Title I schools, which is what the legislature required us to do. So at least half of the dollars will be going to track one. After that, we typically prioritize track four and the producer track in that track. And then we split up tracks 2 and 3 and see what we can do based on how many applications come within each. Because there's $52 million this year, we think everybody has a shot in that, whether you're any type of eligible entity. If you're interested, you should apply. Mm-hmm.
Sarah asked, can a school write a letter of intent for more than one farm applicant for this grant, since schools often procure from many local farms?
Great question. Yes, definitely. So you can only be the primary applicant in one track. But if you're going to write letters of support to the farmers, you're like, yes, I'm planning to work with those farms. That's great. As many farms you're able to, would love to see that. Amy, anything else to clarify on that one? Oh, okay.
Linda asked, please define socially disadvantaged and limited resource farm household.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's in the request for proposals, the RFP as well. And Amy will pull that and put it in the chat for everyone to see. Our definition of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers is more expansive than other places. So it's important to have that in your application to know that there's additional categories included. And then the USDA limited resource farm households is just a USDA economic measure that we utilize for this grant. So Amy will throw both those in the chat for you.
Tarisha asked, as a first-time applicant, is the max $150,000?
No, depends on which grant track you're going to apply in. But you can just choose whatever track, and then track one, it's there's just no, like, you just go into whatever track you're interested in and pull the number. So if it's track one, then there's a funding formula. Oh yeah, 1 or 4. So track one, there's a funding formula, and the minimum award there is $200,000 if you are less than $200K. And then in track 4, you just choose between $15K and $350K, depending on what you need and what you're proposing for your project. Yeah.
Sarah asked, will it be possible to include photos in the application?
Yes, that's something new this year, is that you can include photos in the application. And we think it'll really help with storytelling, so we can see before and afters and those sorts of things. But it also gives reviewers a sense of readiness to implement the project and what's feasible and that sort of thing.
Linda asked, do we have to sign a contract with
Oh,
sorry,
sorry, Rachel. I just want to add, build on what Nick was saying. So in track 4, it's question number 37. So it's kind of like later in the application, but there's a question called visualization. So if you're a producer applicant, then it asks you to please upload up to 5 photos, diagrams, crop plans, et cetera, of your production space that will highlight your ability to implement the project. And then if you're applying as a public serving aggregation and distribution enterprise, then it's a similar question, but it's photos of your aggregation space instead. So yeah, it'll take some scrolling to get to that question, but it's in the application.
And then Abby asked related, are there photos for track 2? Are there photos in other tracks, or is it just the producer track?
It's just track 4, yeah.
Could they upload them if they wanted to in other tracks, or is it's not even able to upload them?
I mean, in track 2, it asks to upload letters of support.
Okay. So not photos. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You could, if you really wanted to, you could link to something in the notes at the end. Anything else you want to add? Yeah, here's a photo. So something great. Okay.
Linda asked, so I forgot where I was. Okay, no, I'm done. Linda asked, do we sign a contract with Amplifund?
There's no contract with Amplifund. You just have to create a profile. And then we do all of our scoring and everything in Amplifund. And then at the end, we once people are selected and notified, then we'll work outside of Amplifunds to set up agreements.
Claudia was looking for the resource page link where I can go to find all the great resources for the grant page. And then the one with on the slides that also has them linked. I'll be linking the slides either later today or it'll be up on the page on Monday is my goal.
Might be Tuesday. I forgot.
Oh, Monday's off. It'll be Tuesday. Long
Not that
weekend.
we're not working. You know, the web team, they'll be on.
Yeah. Myra asked, where can we find the regional contact information?
That's a great question. So I don't actually think that's on our CDFA Farm to School grant webpage. That's on our CDFA Farm to School program webpage, which is like more generally about everything related to farm to school. So under that one, it has like another accordion that says, I think it says meet the farm to school regional team. Yeah, meet the farm to school team. And Amy just put it there in the chat, so you're able to grab it there.
Lori asked, what if our organization applies? Can other organizations write us into their grant proposal?
Great question. And I saw Claudia like upvoted, double voted for that one too. Yes, that's fine. People can write you in. That's good. You just can only be the lead applicant in one.
Vanessa asked, so small schools would apply for the minimum 200,000 and not have to do the mini grant?
It just depends on what your formula is in the thing. So two things. So one, if you're applying and you're the applicant and you're in track one, then you do the funding formula to how much money you're eligible for. At minimum, it'll be 200K, could go all the way up to $1 million. So if you get a track one grant, you don't have to do mini grants out to like your other school sites or stuff like that. That's just an allowable cost if that's something you wanted to do. So you don't have to wait to get a mini grant or anything later. If you're an eligible entity and you're applying, then you could just implement your own thing. Is that good, Vanessa? Or is there more? Yeah, okay. We're close to the end now.
Yeah, we got 3 left so far.
Okay, Amy had one more. Amy had one more follow-up too. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I have all these details running through my head, and I'm like, need to get them out. So for the question about if you're an organization and you're like applying once as the lead applicant, but also if you can be written into other applications as a project partner, I just want to highlight in the RFA on page 16. In eligibility and exclusions, there's just a paragraph that addresses this a little bit, and it just highlights that if you are a project partner in multiple applications, or you're a lead applicant in one and a partner in others, just to remember that projects cannot be duplicative, so there shouldn't be duplication of project costs like across the different applications. And then the other note is just those different proposed projects, like say you have partners, in different funding tracks who are applying all in the same region or something, those proposed projects may complement each other, but they should also be able to stand on their own since it is a competitive grant program in case one of those proposed projects gets funded and the other does not. So yeah, just wanted to highlight those two kind of like details about the eligibility piece.
Margie asked, is the 52.8 million going to be split between all 4 tracks equally?
Oh no, we kind of just went over that too, where at least half's going to track 1, then we typically prioritize track 4, and then we'll see how many apps come in between 2 and 3. And we'll put an FAQ about that on the webpage also.
I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Nerith asked for track 4. We are a small food manufacturer. Are we eligible for track 4? We source ingredients from California family farms and recently started supplying to local schools.
As long as you can answer. So first, I think you should email us with like a link to your webpage and some more info about how you work with schools and farms and that sort of thing. But then as long as you can answer the questions in that eligibility section, then yeah. But still email us and then we'll go back through it. So Amy put it in the chat there.
Okay, and then this one is our last one in the chat, and we can move to raised hands. Bruce asked, I have a question. I'm a startup organization in specialty crop growing. Does this grant cover specialty crops? We are growing 20 acres of Moringa oleifera for medical research and food sustainability, and was curious as to the scope of the funding. And also sorry for the microphone interruption.
Oh, that's okay, Bruce. We've all been there on the microphone front. It would cover growing moringa for school food with kids. But if it's just for medical research and sustainability, then no. So I would look at the project purpose and make sure that there's an alignment with a school, if that's what you're interested in. Otherwise, the California Specialty Crop Block Grant, it has its own set of rules and regulations, but could be a good opportunity there for additional resources too. Yeah. Okay, and then that's all the questions from the chat. Thank you all. Are there live questions? Do people need any follow-ups or clarifications? You could just go at the bottom. There's the reactions tab and hands up. Yeah, Claudia.
Hi, thank you so much for questions. My question is about whole grains. So I read carefully about the descriptions of minimally processed whole grains and what was it eligible. And one of the things that it kept saying that there's going to be a working group to define what minimally processed is, but what is that process about? Who is going to be involved? And if let's say the commission applies, it might be a conflict of interest, but it kind of seems like we should be involved in that working group, but at the same time, there could be a conflict of interest. So that's the question. The second part of it, if we're not part of it, I will highly, highly encourage to keep it that it's 100% California grown, 100% whole grain, or at least, that meets the standards of the requirements of the school, and that no other products are eligible. So keep that minimal process. That will be my request.
Thank you for flagging this. The minimally processed foods thing has been such a surprisingly complex issue. And whether it's fruits and vegetables or meat and dairy products or the grain products, there's so much level of detail and so many if-then scenarios. So what we want to do, it'll probably be after the selections are made, is we'll be able to set up working groups on minimal processing, and then we'll probably have just some sort of interest form. It'll be an informal working group. So it'll be an interest form. Probably what we typically do in those things is, what's your interest? What's your experience? And what do you hope to gain or not gain, but like, what do you hope to, why do you want to be part of this, basically? And then we'll have those working group meetings. It'll be a CDFA form, the school team hosted, and then we'll pull in whoever's in that interest thing. It's been a challenge for sure, because we're trying to look at what's minimally processed for fruit and vegetables is like pretty easy and clear. But like, what about when they just start seasoning? What about with meat products when it's like beef jerky, but it's, got these other ingredients? Like, there's so many layers. Does the salt have to be from California? Like, as small as you could go. So we're really grateful for you for wanting to participate and help inform the thing. And we'll make sure that you know about it when it's open to apply. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Brianna, I see you next.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this. So
Yeah.
I have a question. So I work for a organization, and I also work in the schools and on their educational farm. I don't have enough space to grow the food on the educational farm because that's all for education, right?
Yeah.
But I want to produce with my students, so they have a hands-on learning experience, and they get to see their food in school food. And I've done it once before, and I want to do it on a larger scale. So I'm partnering with my long-term mentor on his property, as well as another one of his mentees. We're going to grow food for school food on his farm, as well on my mentor's farm. And so I'd like to apply for track 4, but because I already work for the nonprofit, and they're also going to apply for, I think, track 1 or track 2. I'm doing it within my job role, right, that I have classes, I serve 3-4 schools plus the 22 schools that we're working with. So I have the education piece, but it's the farm piece that I'm trying to incorporate, and I actually have to expand because I just don't have the space. That's separate from my job. So it just makes me wonder, like, am I eligible or is there a conflict of interest?
First, I'm so happy that you're sharing all this because people wonder, like, what are these confusing rules and why do you have to set them all up? And it's like every situation is so unique and dynamic. And yours is like such a perfect example of that. It's like, I work for the school and I do this with kids, and I work in production ag, and we need more production space, but we also want the kids to be engaged, of course. And so it's this whole thing, it's really challenging. I think we should set up a separate time to dive deeper into kind of the dynamic and see how you would apply. Like, do you have your own business license, or would you apply as the nonprofit, or would you apply in this other category? But I don't want you to have to like share information about your personal people in the community in front of everyone.
So should I connect with
Just
you
email us.
personally? Okay, I'll just email you guys because I know I have somebody else's email.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to email these questions and it keeps bouncing back. So I know that you guys are probably
Do the
same
CA
that we
Farm
are.
to School inbox. Yeah.
All right, farm to school inbox. Thank you guys so much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We're excited to help. Okay, Tamara. Hi. Good to see you.
Hey, Nick. Nice to see you guys. Thank you so much for all the great information. I had a question about track 2 because you alluded to the fact that it's different this year than it was last year, and we have been involved in track 1 before, but not track 2. But we will be moving to track 2 this year. So I'm, broadly speaking, they look pretty similar in the from this year and previous RFAs. And I'm wondering if you could highlight what you see as the big differences for track 2.
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest differences, track 2 in the past had to be a regional approach was one of the things. So they would kind of pick out like, all right, we're gonna be in the Sacramento region, we're gonna be in the East Bay or whatever. So people would have to pick and develop a regional approach for farm to school was one thing. A second thing is that the track 2 eligibility pool was very messy. So it included food hubs, in essence, competing against nonprofit, school garden orgs, competing against food policy councils. It's like, oh my gosh, why do we have all these people in the same pool? So we wanted to figure out a way to keep kind of all the producers and producer adjacent groups together in track 4, and then really kind of allow our nonprofits to look at track 2 as the clearest option to partner. Once we did that, we realized, all right, well, these nonprofits all operate differently, and some of them have a great education focus. They don't have as much to do with school food. Yeah, there could be an overlap, but we don't want to mandate in this application that they are developing a school food and education plan when there's so many amazing orgs that just do work with teachers. So our goal here was to try to develop, one, a clear space for nonprofits to apply and find their lane. And then 2, create those buckets so that people can operate out of their expertise and not have to be, force themselves into a certain school food role where they're like, look, I have the head of instruction and I've never met the nutrition director. Like, this would be the time to, of course, start meeting with them and bring them in. But it's no longer that really tight-knit requirement to have education and food together also. So, yeah.
Super helpful.
Anything else to add there on track 2 and its changes? No, nailed it. Okay. High level, I'm good. Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my question. I'm a producer and I'm intending on applying for track 4, mostly to increase our ability to sell food to our local schools. But over the past few years, we also developed an on-farm education program, but we didn't do it directly with the schools. We've had it on the farm during summer months to provide opportunities for kids to come and learn about agriculture. And we're really excited about applying for the grant to really increase our ability to do this directly with the schools. And I was wondering, do we have to have a history of already running that program directly with schools to be able to apply that to our application, that's our intent to increase our education program? We've worked directly with an accredited teacher, but it's all been done privately, not through the school.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering about history with growing food. Do we already have to have had established relationships with schools and already have been selling, or can this be a new venture that we're going into? We do have the
So
history.
it can be, yeah. So it can be first on the growing side. It could be a new venture of going to schools as long as you've grown food before. It's just hard for any new farmer to get completely set up, start a farm, get going, and layer on all the school admin stuff. So as long as you have a history growing food, you're eligible. And then if the school piece is new, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be fine as long as the school is new, but as long as they have a history of growing food. Is that right?
Yeah, this was such a great question, Sarah. So yeah, in track 4, you don't need to have an established history of like already selling food to the school district or already implementing hands-on food education with the school district. In track 4, it's all about an established relationship. So as long as you have that letter of intent signed from the director of the entity's school meal program, and using that letter of intent template, then that meets that established relationship piece. So you don't have to have an established history in track 4 selling food to the school district or implementing hands-on food education with them. So that's the first thing. There is a question in the track 4 application called farm to school history. So this question is worth up to 5 points, and it asks if you have a history implementing farm to school programs or if you're new to it. So that's a place where you can earn points based on having a farm to school history. But yeah, it's not required that you have that history.
Yeah, that's where I was wondering if it matters if we were actually working directly with the schools. Our program was all for school-age children, and we actually hired an accredited teacher to be here to help run that program. So I just was wondering if that would qualify as history with the schools.
Yeah, for sure, it would.
Okay.
Some of it, in some communities, they're like, oh yeah, well, I've only known them, 50 years. I went there, we went to school there together. Now the person runs the meal program and I run this farm. They've been a customer for 20 years. You're like, yeah, that's great. So lots of options. Okay, any other questions? Look at us. Look at us, team. 27 of us made it the whole 90. Made it the whole 98 or however many minutes this was. Okay, so here's what's coming next. The application is open. Again, I think the best plan of action for all of you is to get into Amplifund, log in. All the application is in one scroll. So you can see every question. You can look at where confusing, and then start going until you get stuck. And that's a great way to work there. And then, of course, start engaging your project partners and all of those sorts of things now. There's one more question for Sharisha in the chat. We're going to answer that one over email because we might need some more info from you to get that one done. So if you could email the inbox with maybe some information about your farm, and then we can reach back out to you. But we love this program, and we love everyone that's here to learn about it and ask the questions. And Farm to School is all the best people because it's not mandated or required anywhere. This is all people who want to go above and beyond to help our kids and help our farms and help our schools and transform these initiatives. So we're super grateful and excited for everyone. So thank you for all the kind words in the chat. And then we'll see you in a couple of days on the Q&A. Okay, have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.